Hello everybody, this is Miss Gordon, and today we're going to discuss properties of kites. So if you will turn to this slide in your Jamboard, you may have to skip a few slides that you haven't done, that's fine. We're going to talk about kites today. So a kite is a quadrilateral with two pairs of congruent sides. So as you can see in my drawing down here, we have the short side would be congruent to the other short side. This longer side would be congruent to the other long side. And if you guys will fill out your Jamboard while you watch this, please. Over here on the right, I have some other examples of kites drawn for you. They don't look like a typical kite, like you would fly a kite. Well, a couple of them do. But they are still quadrilaterals with two pairs of congruent sides. And they're going to follow all these other properties as well. So they're still kites. Next, we have non-vertex angles are congruent. And so you'll need to refer to this drawing here. This shows you where the vertex angles are and the non-vertex angles. So the vertex angles are where the congruent sides come together and form an angle. And the non-vertex angles are where the non-congruent side, the different sides, come together and form an angle. But those two non-vertex angles are congruent. So I'm going to mark that angle as congruent to this angle in my diagram. Next, diagonals are perpendicular. So we're going to draw in our diagonals. Opposite corners. This one, the long one, is sometimes called the main diagonal, and it's actually an axis of symmetry for our kite. We're symmetrical on both sides of the kite for this diagonal. Let's add a sticky note or a note down here that says that. So the kite is symmetrical across this diagonal, meaning that this small angle formed here would be congruent to this small angle formed here. And up here as well, this little angle would be congruent to this little angle. We have the other diagonal here. And they are perpendicular, meaning that they cross at a right angle. So I'm going to put my little right angle marker here to show that they're crossing at a right angle. Next, we have that the short diagonal is bisected by the long diagonal. So this little short diagonal is cut into two equal pieces by the longer one. You can see that the longer diagonal is not cut into two equal pieces, but the shorter one is cut into two equal pieces. This side is congruent to this side, or this point here is the midpoint of that short diagonal. And then the last thing on our list is that the short diagonal splits the kite into two isosceles triangles, which you guys can see that. We have a small isosceles triangle at the top. This side is congruent to this side. This base angle will be congruent to this base angle. And then we have a bigger isosceles, upside down isosceles triangle down here, two congruent sides, and we would have two congruent base angles for that isosceles triangle. Alright, we're going to go now to your practice problems. We're going to keep these properties of kites in mind while we work those problems. So go to your next slide. It says for 1 through 7, determine if each statement is true or false. If quadrilateral KLMN is a kite. The first one says KM, that's this diagonal here, the long diagonal, is perpendicular to LN. That's this diagonal. And we know from our properties that for a kite, the diagonals are perpendicular. That's what this symbol here means. It means perpendicular to, or crosses at a right angle. So this is true. The next one says angle, this is an angle, KJN, KJN, we're talking about this angle right here, is congruent to MJL, angle MJL, this angle right here. Well, we know that those two are both 90 degrees, so they would be congruent because they're both right angles, so that's true. Angle NKM, it's talking about this angle right here. Let me erase these out here for you. This angle up here, NKM, is congruent to KMN, KMN, this angle down here. And those are not congruent because this angle K is not congruent to angle M. Those are the vertex angles, so they're not congruent. So this is false. Next, segment KJ is congruent to segment JM. KJ would be this segment here, this top segment, and JM would be this bottom segment, and hopefully you can see that those are not congruent to one another, so that's false. JN is congruent to JL. JN would be this segment on the left. JL is this segment over here. And remember, this is the midpoint of that small diagonal, that shorter diagonal. So this side is congruent to this side, which means this is true. KN is congruent to LK. This is KN right here. And it is congruent to LK right here, because that is one of the properties of a kite, that these little short sides are congruent and then the long sides are also congruent. So this is true. And then angle NKM, which is NKM, once again this angle up here, is congruent to angle LKM, LKM, this angle right here. And that's actually a true statement, because remember, this long diagonal is sort of like an axis of symmetry, so it cuts the angle here into two equal pieces. So this is true. All right, then the bottom says find the value of the variables in each kite. Sometimes it helps to mark up your kite with what you know to be true. So I know that this side is congruent to this side and this side is congruent to that side. That doesn't really help me. But I also know that my non-vertex angles are congruent. So angle Y here would have to be congruent to this 146. So that means Y would have to equal 146 degrees. They should have degree signs on them. And then I know that this is a quadrilateral. So even though the 47 and the X are not congruent, I know that 146 plus another 146 plus my 47 plus X has to add up to the four sides of a quadrilateral, which is 360 degrees. So when you solve for X here, you should get 21 degrees. Next, number 9. Now we're looking at the sides of our kite. You can draw in your diagonals if it helps you visualize your kite better. Sometimes that helps me. And so I know my two short sides are congruent. This side is congruent to this side, so X must have to be 12. And my two long sides are congruent. Y must have to equal 20. That was easy. Next, we have X here where the two diagonals cross, and hopefully you remember that the diagonals are perpendicular, so X would be a right angle, a 90-degree angle, so X equals 90 degrees. And then Y we're going to have to figure out, but I also know that since X is 90, this angle right here is also 90, and since this angle here is 22, and the long diagonal is cutting my kite into two equal pieces, symmetrical pieces, then this angle here has to equal this angle, so this is also 22. And now I have a triangle that has to add up to 180 degrees. So 90 plus 22 plus Y equals 180. And I can solve for Y, and I get 68 degrees. All right, last but not least, I don't know where this is a degree sign, but I don't know which angle it's talking about, so we're going to ignore that up there, pretend that doesn't exist. You can white it out on your Jamboard if you'd like. But I do know that I have 90 degrees where my diagonals meet because this is a kite. If this angle here is 2x and this angle is x plus 6, then I can add all of those together to get 180. So x plus 6 plus 2x plus 90 equals 180 degrees. I'm going to combine my like terms. I have a 1x and a 2x, so 3x plus 96 equals 180. And then you would solve for x, and you should get x equals 28. All right, that's all you have to complete for today, and we will let you know what is for tomorrow. Have a great day.